It was 1:14 in the morning when I handed the last burger of the night through a dormitory door to a boy who never once looked up from his phone. "Thanks," he muttered, and the door closed in my face before the word had finished landing. I stood there, a moment on the cold concrete step. 71 years old, my feet aching in shoes. I'd resoled twice because new ones weren't in the budget. The red insulated delivery bag empty now and folded under my arm. Behind me, in the old Camry idling at the curb, Earl's dented steel thermos sat in the cup holder where it had ridden beside me every single shift for 2 years. His coffee was long gone, cold in it. I never washed that thermos out and started fresh. I just kept refilling it, because it was the closest thing I had to riding those dark roads with him still. I drove home under streetlights, the colour of weak tea, past house after house, where every honest person was asleep. And I told myself the thing I told myself every night to keep my chin up. There is no shame in honest work. My Earl said it for 40 years, and I believed him, and on most nights, it was enough. My house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. Every window of it. Both my grown children were asleep behind their closed bedroom doors. Megan, who was 38 years old, and Derek, who was 41 and had been asleep since long before midnight, having done, between the two of them, across the entire span of that day, precisely nothing. I let myself in quietly so as not to wake them, which is a thing I have thought about a great deal since. I crept through my own house in the dark, so that the two people I was breaking my body to shelter would not have their sleep disturbed. My hands didn't shake that night. Not yet. That came the next morning. I was leaving for a daytime shift, my bag on the passenger seat, the engine just turned over, when Megan came out the front door in the bright sleeveless dress she wears for brunch. There was a car idling at the curb behind me. 2 of her friends in it, sunglasses pushed up, iced coffees sweating in the cup holders, a little world of leisure on a Saturday morning. Megan walked over to my window and bent down close and dropped her voice, the way you do when you don't want carrying. "Mom, hey, listen." She glanced back over her shoulder at the car. "Could you do me a favor and park around back from now on? When you've got, you know." She gestured vaguely at the red bag on my seat. "The delivery stuff, the bag and all that. I don't love my friends seeing it sitting in the driveway." She gave a small laugh that had no warmth in it at all. "It kind of makes us look poor, you know." I looked at my daughter for a long moment. She was wearing the little gold earrings I had bought her 2 birthdays ago. She was standing on the porch of a house I owned outright, free and clear. And she was asking me, quietly, so the women in that car wouldn't hear, to hide the work that kept the electricity flowing, and the water running, and the roof intact over all of our heads, so that her friends would not learn the truth of how the bills got paid in this family. "It makes us look poor," I repeated, just to be sure I'd heard it. "You know what I mean." She was already walking backward toward the curb, flashing her brunch smile. "Thanks, Mom. You're the best." I didn't answer. I backed out and drove my shift and delivered 40 meals to 40 doors. And I thought about it the whole day, turning it over and over like a stone in my shoe. And that evening, when I came home, I parked the Camry right out front, in the driveway, where God and the neighbors and anyone driving past could see the woman of that house and the work she did to keep it standing. But I want you to understand something, because it matters to everything that came after. I did not decide anything that morning. I am a slow woman by nature, and a patient one, and I had been patient for 3 long years by then. The deciding didn't come in the driveway. It came later, on an empty road in the middle of the night, at a red light, when I nearly did not wake up. Let me tell you how a woman my age ends up delivering hamburgers at 1 in the morning to keep a roof over 2 grown people, who are ashamed to be seen anywhere near her. My Earl died 3 years ago. 40 years a lineman. He was up a pole in the ice storms and the August heat, restoring power to strangers' houses in the worst weather God sends. A man with hands like worn saddle leather who was never, not one day in his life, ashamed of honest work. He used to say it to me, sitting out on our porch of an evening with his coffee going cold in that very thermos. An honest day's work never shamed a soul, Gloria. It's the ones who won't work who ought to blush. His heart gave out on an ordinary Tuesday in the spring, with no warning at all, between his second cup of coffee and his shoes. The funeral and the last of the hospital bills ate most of what little we had managed to put aside across a careful life. And then, one after the other, my children came home. Derek came first, 2 years ago, when his startup folded. There was always a startup with Derek. Always some idea that was 6 months away from changing everything. Always a pitch deck, and never a paycheck. When it collapsed, he showed up on my porch with 3 duffel bags and a gaming computer worth more than my car, and he said, "Just till I get back on my feet." Mom. He has not, to this day, gotten back on his feet, because he has never once stood up. Then Megan, 18 months ago, after her divorce. She arrived with a moving truck and a great many boxes, and the same sentence. "Just until things settle, Mom." Nothing ever settled for Megan either, because settling would have required her to want something other than to be taken care of. And neither of them, in all that time, across 2 years and 18 months, paid me one single dollar toward the house they lived in. I want you to see them, clearly, both of them, because it would be the easy thing to turn them into cartoon villains, and they were not villains. They were something quieter and, in its way, sadder. They were comfortable. They had found a soft place to land me, and they had no intention of ever getting up. Derek slept until noon and gamed until 4 in the morning, a headset clamped over his ears, shouting at strangers across the internet while the electric meter spun. I'd come down some mornings before my shift and find every light in the basement still blazing from his all-night session, the room sour with energy drink cans. He'd surface in the early afternoon, shuffle into my kitchen, eat whatever I'd cooked, and tell me about the new idea, the one that was really going to work this time. And once I remember it exactly, he sat at my table with his mouth full of the pot roast I'd made and paid for, glanced at my red delivery bag hanging by the door, and said, "No offense, Mom, but DoorDash at your age is kind of sad. No offense." While eating the food my sad job had bought, Megan was a different kind of comfortable. Megan was about appearances. There was a package on our porch nearly every day. New clothes, new gadgets, little luxuries, always something arriving. She'd open them at the kitchen table and frown if the color was wrong, and arrange a return, all while the credit card bill she never saw climbed in my name. She had her standing Saturday brunch with the friends. She had her spa bookings, scrolled and selected on a phone she complained loudly was embarrassingly old. And mostly, she managed how things looked. How the house looked when people came by. How the yard looked. How we looked. She was forever, quietly, ashamed of how things appeared to the outside world, and she never once let herself understand that the only thing keeping up that appearance was her mother. Out in a Camry at 1 in the morning, hauling other people's dinners up other people's steps. I did the laundry, theirs and mine, before my shifts. I did it at 6 in the morning while they slept, folding Derek's t-shirts and Megan's brunch dresses, because if I didn't, it didn't get done. I cooked the dinners. I bought the groceries. I paid the property tax, $2,600 a year. I paid the high electric bill that Derek's nights ran up. I paid Derek's car insurance on a car he barely drove anywhere worth going. And I paid for Caleb's school clothes. Gladly. Always gladly. Because Caleb was different, and I'll come to Caleb. I drained the last of Earl's small retirement to keep us all afloat. And when that money finally, inevitably ran dry, I sat at my kitchen table one night and I faced the truth of it. I had a choice. I could lose Earl's house, the house we'd burned, the mortgage papers over in 1998, laughing in the kitchen like newlyweds. Or I could ask my 2 grown children, who slept until noon, to contribute something. Or I could go to work. I'll be honest with you about my own failing here, because these stories shouldn't pretend the woman telling them was wise the whole way through. I could not bear to lose Earl's house, and I did not believe, back then, somewhere deep and crippled in me, that I had the right to ask my own children for anything. A mother gives, I'd been taught. A mother does not ask. So I did the thing that felt least like a burden on anyone but me. I signed up to drive. But there did come a night, finally, when I asked. I want you to hold on to this, because it is the hinge of the whole story. It was an ordinary Thursday evening. Derek was downstairs. Megan was at the table with a new package, and I laid the electric bill flat on the kitchen table between them, face up, where they could both read the number on it. And I kept my voice gentle and steady, because I wasn't accusing, I was asking. I need to talk to you both for a minute, I said. I need each of you to put something toward the house this month. Whatever you can manage, even a little. I'm having trouble carrying all of it on my own anymore. Megan didn't look up from the tissue paper she was unwrapping. Mom, this is honestly not a good month for me. I'm kind of between things right now, money-wise. A small pause, a little crease of irritation between her brows. And I mean, isn't this house going to be ours eventually anyway? It feels kind of weird to pay rent on a place that's basically already ours. From the basement stairs, Derek called up without coming up. The startup's about to close a funding round, Mom. Like, genuinely weeks out. I'll catch you all the way up the second it lands, I promise. It's just really bad timing right now. It's been bad timing for 2 years, Derek, I said softly. Don't make it a whole thing, Megan said, and went back to her package. So I picked up the bill, and I folded it, and I did not make it a whole thing. But that same week, I watched. I watched the packages keep arriving on the porch, 1, 2, a third by Friday. I watched Megan's brunch photos go up online. The bottomless mimosas, the avocado toast. I watched the delivery bags from their own dinners, ordered to the door. The very thing I drove all night to deliver to strangers pile up in our recycling bin. There was money in that house. There was money for brunch and for games and for packages and for comfort. There was money for everything in the world except the roof that sheltered all of it. I had asked them, plainly and in the open, for help. They had refused me. And they had refused me while perfectly, casually comfortable, without missing a single brunch or a single round of whatever Derek played until dawn. I didn't know it yet, sitting there folding that bill back into my purse. But I was just 3 days away from the red light. It was the following Thursday. I'd worked 4 nights straight because the bills were due and the kids' deliveries had run the credit card up again. And 4 nights of those small, dark hours hollow a person out at any age, let alone at 71. The last drop of the night was way out by the highway, a sad little burger to a sad little apartment, and when it was done, I was running on nothing at all. My eyes felt full of grit. My hands felt far away. I came to a red light on a long, empty stretch of road, not another car in sight in any direction, and I stopped, and I waited. And the engine hummed its warm, steady hum, and the heater breathed across my legs, and my eyes, just for a second, just to rest them, my eyes closed. My head dropped forward. And then a horn went off behind me, enormous and blaring in the dead silence. And I came awake with my heart hammering so hard it hurt, and my whole body lurching upright in the seat. The light was green. It had been green long enough that the car behind me had laid on the horn. My foot had come off the brake. The Camry had rolled just slightly, just a foot or two out toward the empty black intersection. A few more seconds. That is all it would have taken. A few more seconds of those closed eyes, and I would have drifted out into that crossing, or into the ditch, or worse. And a woman would have died at 71 in a Camry that smelled like other people's French fries, and the 2 people she did it for would have slept right through the phone call. I pulled into the lot of an all-night gas station with my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the wheel, and I put it in park, and I sat there, in the dark, and I could not stop trembling. And the truth came to me not as a thought I reasoned my way to, but as a thing that simply arrived whole and undeniable, the way you know your own name in the dark. I almost died tonight. On an empty road, for 2 grown adults who are asleep in my house right this minute. 2 grown adults who are ashamed to be seen anywhere near the work I nearly died doing. 2 grown adults who could not put $1 single toward the roof, I am killing myself to keep over their heads. When I could drive again, I went to the all-night diner I like, the one I stop at between the late shifts. Ruthie was on. She's worked that counter longer than I've driven, and she knows my name and my order. And she took one look at my face as I came through the door, and she didn't say a word about it. She just poured a coffee and set it in front of me, and put her hand on my shoulder for a second. "You look like you've had yourself a night, hun," she said quietly, and she didn't ring it up. More care, from a stranger in an apron at 2 in the morning, in 5 seconds, than I'd had from my own 2 children, under my own roof, in a year. I took out the little spiral notebook I keep in my purse, the one for grocery lists, and the thoughts I never say out loud to anyone. And with my hand still not quite steady, I wrote, "I am not the help in my own life, and I am not going to die in this car for people who won't even sit up to look at me." I underlined it twice, hard enough to tear the paper a little. And only then, sitting in that warm booth with Ruthie's free coffee going cold in front of me, my heart finally slowing, only then did the idea come to me, full and clear and certain. Earl's house was worth a great deal more than the debt sitting against it. I could sell it. I could pay off every last thing I owed. I could buy something small and quiet and entirely my own, and I could stop. I could put the red bag down for good and never again drive a 1 in the morning shift to keep a roof over 2 people who were embarrassed by the sight of me. It was not revenge. I need you to understand that, because it would be easy to mistake it for revenge. And it wasn't. It was survival. I had nearly died on that empty road, and at the diner counter I finally, simply, decided to live. I called a real estate agent the very next morning. Her name was Nadia. She had a brisk way of talking and a handshake, like she meant every bit of it. And she came to the house while the kids were out. Megan at her brunch. Derek gone. Wherever Derek went on the rare afternoons, he left. Nadia walked the rooms, looked at the bones of the place, and confirmed what I already knew in my heart. The house was mine, solely and entirely. Earl's estate had settled to me years before. It was mine to sell, and the 2 grown people sleeping in it had no legal claim on it whatsoever. "There is one complication, though," she said gently, and she nodded toward the gaming chair in the corner and the wall of packages stacked in the front hall. "Buyers have to see a house to buy it. That means showings. And if your son and daughter don't want this sale to go through, and it sounds like they won't, they can make showings a nightmare. Refuse to leave during them. Leave the place a wreck. Be rude to buyers. Scare them off. So here's how I'd handle it." She laid it out plainly. "We don't put a big sign up and announce it. We list it quiet. Coming soon. I bring my photographer in on a morning you tell me they'll be out. We schedule showings carefully, around when they're gone. And when the time comes, we give them proper written notice, everything by the book, so they can't legally stall the closing." She paused and looked at me kindly. "It's not the fast way, Mrs. Bennet, but it's the way that actually works." "Then we'll do it the way that works," I said. And then she did a thing I will carry with me always. She set her clipboard down on my kitchen counter, and she said, "Before we talk numbers, would you walk me through the house? Tell me about it. It helps me sell a place, knowing what it was to the person who lived in it." So we walked it, the 2 of us, room by room. And that hour was the hardest hour of the whole long ordeal. Harder than the red light. Harder than what came after. I showed her the kitchen window where Earl drank his coffee every single morning for 40 years, watching the birds come and go at the feeder he built. I showed her the door frame between the kitchen and the hallway, where a ladder of pencil marks climbed up the white-painted wood. Caleb, age 4. Caleb, age 7. Caleb, age 11. Caleb, age 15. My grandson, growing taller up the side of my house, one penciled line at a time. I showed her the porch where my husband had told me, more times than I could count, that a working man should never be ashamed of his hands. I was letting it all go. Earl's house. The walls that held my entire life inside them. And I want you to understand it was not bitterness that let me do it, and it was not spite. It was that the people living inside those walls had turned a home into a cage, and I had very nearly died keeping the bars of it polished. That same afternoon, I drove out to a little one-bedroom condo by the lake that Nadia had mentioned, with a small balcony that looked straight out over the water, and I put in an offer on it. And I quietly did two more things while I was at it. I had a simple will drawn up, leaving what I had to my grandson Caleb, and I opened a small college fund in his name, and put the first of what I could into it, for the one person in that whole family who had ever ridden along beside me in the dark and been proud of his grandmother, instead of ashamed of her. I kept driving while the sale worked its way through. But I drove lighter now. For the first time in 3 years, there was an end to it in sight, a shore I was swimming toward. Caleb figured it out before any of them. He's 16, and he's sharp, and he loves me. And he noticed Nadia's car in the driveway twice, and he noticed the change in my face. And one evening he came and sat down on the edge of my bed, the way he used to do when he was a little boy who couldn't sleep. "Grandma," he said, "are you selling the house?" I have never once lied to that boy, and I wasn't about to start. "Yes," I said, "I am." He nodded slowly, and his eyes filled up, but it wasn't anger that filled them. I watched it move across his young face first, the worry, the fear of change, and then, underneath it, plain as day, something that looked almost like relief. "You almost got hurt, didn't you?" he said. It wasn't really a question. "Driving. I can tell. You've been coming home looking so tired, Grandma, like scary tired." "I almost did," I told him. "One night last week I nearly didn't come home at all." He came around on night shifts with me after that, when his mother believed he was off at a friend's house. He'd ride in the passenger seat where Earl's thermos rode, and he'd carry the bags up the steps to the doors so I wouldn't have to climb them on my bad knees. And he'd ring the bells and jog back to the car, grinning at me through the windshield. He asked if I'd teach him to drive in the old Camry, and I said I would. We talked about his grandfather on those drives, and I gave him Earl's, saying, "The one about honest hands," and he turned it over carefully like it was something made of glass. But then, on one of those late rides, he went quiet for a long stretch, just watching the dark go by out the window, and I knew something was working its way up in him. "Grandma," he said finally, not looking at me, "where's Mum supposed to go? After you sell it, where's she going to live?" There it was. The question of a good boy with his heart pulled in two directions. I pulled the car over to the shoulder, and I put it in park, and I took his hand in mine, and I did not get angry, not even a flicker of it, because his loyalty to his mother was not a flaw in him. It was the best thing about him. "Your mother is a grown woman, Caleb," I said gently. "She is 38 years old. And loving her does not mean letting her use me until there is nothing left of me. Not for her, not for you, not for anybody. I asked your mother and your uncle for help, plainly, out loud, at my own kitchen table. They said no. And they kept ordering their suppers to the door while I delivered other people's all night long. And then I fell asleep at a red light and nearly drove into an intersection. I squeezed his hand. Your mother didn't even notice I came home late that night." Loving somebody and letting them sink, you are not the same thing, sweetheart. You can love your mother with your whole heart and still want your grandmother to be alive next year. He was crying now, quietly, the streetlight catching the tears on his cheek. "I don't want to turn out like them," he whispered. "Like Mum, like Uncle Derek. I'm scared I've got it in me." "You won't," I told him, and I meant it down to my bones. "Do you want to know how I know?" "Because you just said it out loud, and neither of them ever could, not once in their lives. And because you carry the bag up to the door for me. You always have, since you were little. That right there, that's the whole entire difference between you and them, Caleb. And it always will be." I told him about the college fund then. Not as a bribe, I was careful about that. I wanted him to understand it wasn't a trade for his loyalty, but as the simple truth, that whatever happened with his mother, however the dust settled, he would have a way forward in this world, because somebody had seen him. And he put his head down on my shoulder right there in the parked car and cried like the little boy whose height was penciled up my doorframe, and I held him in the dark. And I will tell you, for the first time in 3 years, I felt like a rich woman. The nights before they found out were the hardest on me, and I'm going to tell you about them honestly, because I don't believe in pretending the strong woman never once wavered. I wavered. Lying awake in my soon-to-be-sold house in the small hours, the doubt came creeping in, and the cruel thing about it was that it came dressed up as my own conscience. What kind of mother sells the house right out from under her own children? Where will they really go? Isn't this Earl's house? Wouldn't selling it be a betrayal of him, of everything we built? I had been raised from a girl to believe that a mother pours herself out for her children until she is empty, and that the emptying is precisely what love is. And here I was, doing the very opposite, and in the dark of those nights it felt less like freedom and more like a sin I'd have to answer for. One night I actually picked up the phone to call Nadia and cancel the whole thing. I had her number up on the screen. My thumb was over it. But I didn't press it, because Earl's voice came to me, clear as the porch light on a summer evening. An honest day's work never shamed a soul, Gloria. And right behind it came one clear, steadying thought. I am not throwing my children out of their home. I am leaving a house that is mine, that I nearly died to keep, and they are two grown adults who are finally going to have to stand on the legs I have been carrying them on for years. And letting a grown person stand on their own legs is not cruelty. After everything, it might be the last truly kind thing I have left to give them. I set the phone back down on the nightstand. The doubt didn't vanish entirely, but it lay back down in the dark, and eventually, so did I. They found out the day the sign went up. It was only a small one, a tasteful little "coming soon," staked discreetly in the corner of the yard. But Megan saw it the moment she got home, and she came through the front door like a weather front. What is this? She had a photo of it pulled up on her phone, was waving the screen at me. Mom, what is this? Are you selling our house? It's not our house, Megan, I said from my chair by the window. It's my house, and yes, I am. You can't do that, her voice climbed the register. Where are we supposed to go? You're our mother, you can't just sell the house out from under your own children. Do you have any idea how this is going to look? People are going to think you threw us out on the street. And there it was, laid bare. Not where will we live, not how will we manage, how is it going to look? Derek surfaced from the basement, drawn up by the noise, blinking in the late afternoon light like a man unused to it. This is insane, he announced to the room. You can't sell a family's house, Mom. We're family. There's got to be something. And he actually pulled out his phone right there and started typing. And I learned later he spent the better part of that evening searching the internet for some way to legally stop me. Some tenant's right, some loophole, some claim. There was none, of course. The house was mine, free and clear, and so was the leaving of it. But I want you to notice what he reached for first, before anything else, before even pretending to be hurt. Not where will I go, but how do I stop her from taking what I assumed was mine? Both of you, I said, and my voice did not rise, because it had no need to. Spend money every week, on brunches, on packages, on games, on your own dinners delivered to this door. I laid an electric bill flat on that very table, and I asked the two of you for help one single time, and between you, you couldn't manage $1. You let me drive until 1 in the morning. You let me fall asleep at the wheel of a car. I turned to my daughter. And you, Megan, you told me to park around back so your friends wouldn't see the bag, so we wouldn't look poor. So no. I do not believe I am the one in this house who ought to be worried about how things look. Megan's face went hard and white, and she cast about for the heaviest weapon in her reach, and she found it. She reached for Earl. But I'll tell you what she did with it in a moment, because first there was Derek, and Derek surprised me. It happened the next evening. The blow-up had burned itself out for the night. Megan had stormed off to a friend's to make phone calls about how unfair it all was. I was in the kitchen, wrapping the few dishes I meant to keep, when Derek came up the basement stairs. Not loud this time, no announcement. He stood in the doorway a while. This 41-year-old man who had been a soft, round-cheeked baby in my arms once, and he watched me wrap a coffee cup in newspaper, and something in his face had come loose. There was never a funding round, he said, finally, quietly. Mom, there was never the startup. It's been dead for 2 years. There's no round coming. There never was. He looked at his own hands. I just kept saying it because if I stopped saying it, I'd have to figure out what I actually am. And I don't know how to do that. I'm 41, and I don't know how to be a person. Dad knew how to be a person. I never learned it, and now it's too late, and it's easier to just... He stopped. His voice had thickened. For one moment, one real and naked moment, my son stood in my kitchen and let me see the frightened, lost boy underneath all that comfortable nothing, and my old heart broke clean in half for him. I set down the cup. It is not too late, Derek, I said softly. It is not too late to learn to stand, but I cannot learn it for you. I tried, for 2 years, by holding you up, and all it did was let you stay down. The kindest thing I can do now is take away the soft place you've been landing on, so you finally have to find your feet. And I watched him hear it. I watched it almost reach him. And then I watched him reach for the comfort anyway. Because that is the thing about a soft place. It is very, very hard to leave, even when it is killing the person who provides it. The vulnerability folded back up behind his face. His jaw set. So you're just going to put us out, he said. Flat now, the boy gone again. The sulk returned. After everything, great, thanks, Mom. And he turned and went back down the stairs into the dark and the glow of his screen. And the moment was over. But I had seen it. I held on to it. Somewhere under all that wasted comfort, my Derek knew. And a man who knows has a chance, however far off, that a man who doesn't never gets. The offer came through that same week. A young couple, expecting their first baby in the spring, who walked through the house and fell in love with Earl's kitchen window and the pencil marks on the doorframe and the porch. They made an offer over asking, and I took it, and just like that, it was done. The house was sold. And the night before the closing, with the boxes stacked in the hall and the rooms half emptied, Megan stood in my kitchen and threw her last and heaviest card down on the table. Dad would be ashamed of you, she said, and her voice shook with the cruelty of it. He built this house for his family. He'd be ashamed of what you're doing to us, to his own grandchildren. The whole room went still. I stood up out of my chair, slowly, my old knees protesting every inch of the way, and I faced my daughter across the kitchen of the house her father built. And I gave her the only thing I had, which was the truth, plain and unanswerable. Your father built this house with work, Megan, I said. Not with sleep, not with excuses, not with packages stacked on the porch and a funding round that was always 6 months away. He built it with 40 years up a pole in the ice and the heat and the dark, and he was never, one single day of his life, ashamed of an honest pair of hands. My voice was low and steady, and it filled every corner of that kitchen. The only thing in this house that would ever have shamed your father is 2 grown children who would let their mother fall asleep at the wheel of a car at 1 o'clock in the morning sooner than get up before noon to help her carry the load. So don't you dare put Earl Bennett's name in your mouth to hold on to a roof you would not lift one finger to keep. She had no answer. There is never any answer to the truth. She stood there with her mouth open and nothing came out of it. The day you told me to hide my work, I said, quieter now, the fight gone out of the room, and only the truth left standing in it. So your friends wouldn't see that we looked poor the work that fed you. That kept the lights on over your head, that I was breaking my 71-year-old body to do. That was the day I decided to take the roof with me when I left. You were never ashamed of being poor, Megan. You were ashamed of me. And I have decided, after 3 long years, to stop apologizing for the woman who kept you dry. They moved out the following week. There was no shouting at the end, no final scene. Megan went to her friends first, then to a rental across town. Derek, I would learn. Finally took a job, a real one, with a schedule and a name tag and a manager, because the soft place was gone at last. And a man will discover his own legs the moment there is nothing left beneath him to catch his fall. I felt no triumph in any of it. I felt the quiet, bottomless ache of a mother watching her grown children learn to walk for the first time, decades too late, and only because she finally stopped, offering them her own spine to lean on. I let myself grieve, but not for their cruelty that I was, by then, past. What I grieved for was the children they had been before the world, and I, between us, made them soft. The boy who fell asleep with his head on my chest, because he said my heartbeat was louder than the rain. The girl who used to bring me dandelions from the yard, like they were roses. Those two were real once. I held their memory gently, and then I let it rest, because the grown ones standing in front of me were a different matter, and I owed the soft place to neither of them anymore. Before the new family took the keys, I went back one last time with a screwdriver, and I carefully worked loose the strip of door frame with Caleb's height marks, climbing up it age 4, age 7, age 11, age 15, and I wrapped it in a dish towel and carried it out to the car. I took Earl's thermos. The rest of the house I left to a young couple who would fill it with a baby's crying and a baby's laughing. And I stood on the porch a moment and hoped my Earl would like that. A new family making it warm again. I believe he would have. I believe he'd have built the baby a feeder for the window. The condo by the lake is small, and it is quiet, and it is entirely and only mine. Every morning I carry my coffee out onto the little balcony, and I set Earl's old dented thermos up on the railing beside me, and I watch the light come up across the water, the way Earl watched his birds at the feeder for 40 years. The strip of doorframe with Caleb's heights penciled up, it is mounted on my hallway wall now, where I pass it every day. The morning light comes in clean and gold. No one in this home sighs when I nudge the thermostat up a degree. No package arrives that I did not order myself. And nobody is ashamed of me here. I still drive DoorDash. A few shifts a week, in the daytime now. Never again, those small, dangerous hours that nearly took me off that empty road. But I do it because I choose to, for the motion of it, for Ruthie and the regulars at the diner, for the plain, clean dignity of a day's honest work in a body that, thank God, can still do it. My Earl was right all along. The work never once shamed me. It was the ones who wouldn't work who should have been blushing. Caleb's college fund grows a little every month. He visits most weekends, takes the bus clear across town with his backpack, and we bake, and I am teaching him to drive in the old Camry, the very car I nearly died in. Made gentle again, carrying a boy, learning how to be a good man. When his mother's first year on her own got hard, and her landing got rough, he asked if he could come and stay with me for a while. And I said yes, of course, always yes. Every time, because that boy carried the bag up to the door. Megan and I speak now and again, carefully, like two people stepping across ice. She has never truly apologized, not in words, but she has grown quieter, and once, on the phone, she mentioned that the rental felt so small, and I held my tongue about who used to feel small in a house she lived in for free, because some things you simply let lie. Derek calls less, but when he calls, there's a job in his voice now, a tiredness that is the good kind, the earned kind, and once he said, stiff and quick, like it cost him something. The work's not so bad, actually. I said I was glad. I didn't say more. The crack I saw in my kitchen that night was real, and a man who's seen the lost boy in himself has a road out, even if it's long. We'll see. I have hope for Derek that I keep quiet, the way you keep a candle out of the wind. I was never the shame in that house. I know that now, all the way down to the floor of me. I was the only reason it had a roof to be ashamed under. If you are listening to this, and you have ever been made to feel ashamed of the very work that keeps your own lights on, if anyone has ever told you to park around back, to hide the apron, to put the bag away so you don't embarrass the people who eat the food you buy with it, Then I need you to hear me clearly, because I learned this far too late, and I would spare you even one of those nights. Your work was never the shame. The shame belongs entirely to the ones who won't get up off the couch to help you carry it. There is a difference, a real and bright line difference, between the people who are grateful for what you do and the people who are embarrassed by it. You are allowed to know which is which, and you are allowed to stop pouring yourself out, drop by drop, into the ones who are only ever embarrassed. You are allowed to stop carrying people who refuse to stand. You are allowed to sell the cage, even one you built with your own 2 hands. You do not owe your exhaustion, or your aching feet, or your safety, or your very life at a red light at 1 o'clock in the morning to anyone alive, not even to your own children, especially not to people who are ashamed to be seen standing beside you. Because sometimes dignity does not arrive with shouting. Sometimes it arrives very quietly in a small sign staked in the corner of a yard, and a little balcony out over the water, and a thermos of coffee. You have finally, after all these years, earned the right to drink in peace. If this story found you today, share it. Pass it along to a woman who has been made to feel small for working hard with her hands. Remind her that her hands were never, ever, the shame in it. I drove the dark roads for 3 years to keep a roof over the heads of 2 people who were ashamed of me. Now I keep my own roof. And every single morning, I drink my coffee right where the light comes in.